The special counsel has spoken. Jack Smith filed to the Supreme Court in response to Donald Trump's claim of presidential immunity in the case related to the former president's effort to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Robert Laguerre joins me now from Washington. So, Robert, this is all very new at the moment, but walk us through the importance of the filings and any key parts of Smith's argument.
Hey, good evening, John. Thanks for having me. So, as we're just getting in these filings today, what we're learning is that Jack Smith is sticking to his argument from past legal filings and hearings. The special counsel has been arguing that the former president, Donald Trump, is not immune from prosecution, absolutely immune from prosecution, based on his conduct that occurred while he was still in office. The former president filed a motion to dismiss the Jack Smith indictment based right here in D.C. last year to dismiss the case on grounds of presidential immunity, arguing that because the alleged conduct.
All right, folks, welcome to Dr. John Podcast right now. The White House has been placed under multiple emergency lockdowns amid unprecedented security threats, including gunfire near its perimeter and breaches of its defenses. The commander-in-chief remains hunkered inside as the nation faces a dual crisis, not just whether Trump will be removed, but whether the fortress itself can remain secure. The alarming frequency of these security incidents during Trump's second term has shattered the illusion of invincibility that once surrounded the president's residence. The White House, which has stood as an enduring symbol of American democracy for over 2 centuries, has been forced into lockdown mode not once, but multiple times, as threats have materialized with terrifying regularity. These are not minor security scares or false alarms that can be dismissed as routine bureaucratic overreaction. These are genuine security emergencies that have required the full activation of emergency protocols, the sealing of critical areas, and the sheltering of staff and press corps members who suddenly found themselves in the crosshairs of potential danger.
Amounts to efforts to prevent the certification of the Electoral College on January 6th. They basically allege that he is immune from that because it occurred while he was president. Jack Smith has been arguing since then that that is not the case. In tonight's filing, he reiterates that and says that former presidents are not immune from being criminally charged for official acts that they took as president. So the special counsel is saying that a former president can be charged with crimes related to conduct that occurred while the president was in office. Now, importantly, the special counsel also says that should the Supreme Court find that the conduct that's alleged here was an official act, should the Supreme Court find that there is some immunity that can be applied to official acts as presidents, that would not be applied to this case because, as the special counsel argues, the former president acted as a private citizen in his post-2020 election conduct.
The reality is that the most secure building in America has proven vulnerable, and the implications of this vulnerability extend far beyond the marble halls and manicured lawns of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. When the north lawn of the White House was sealed off during a particularly alarming security breach, it sent shockwaves through the political establishment and the security community. This was not some remote corner of the complex that could be quietly secured without disrupting operations. The North Lawn is a critical operational area where press vehicles are stationed, where official movements occur, and where the daily business of the presidency unfolds. The fact that this area had to be completely locked down, that the press corps was ordered to shelter in place, that Secret Service agents scrambled to contain whatever threat had materialized, speaks volumes about the seriousness of the situation. The Secret Service, an agency renowned for its professionalism and its ironclad commitment to presidential protection, does not initiate such drastic measures without compelling cause.
This is a CBS News special report. I'm Nancy Cordes. Breaking news from Washington. CBS News has learned special counsel Jack Smith has filed to dismiss the D.C. federal case against former President Donald Trump. The Justice Department charged Trump last year with plotting to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. This dismissal comes after Trump won the presidential election a few weeks ago. The Justice Department has a policy against prosecuting sitting presidents. The dismissal says, in part, that prohibition is categorical and does not turn on the gravity of the crimes charged, the strength of the government's proof, or the merits of the prosecution. To discuss that, I want to bring in CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane. He has been covering developments in this investigation and the other cases pending against Donald Trump since the beginning. Scott, in layman's terms, what does this mean?
This historic case against Donald Trump for allegations he tried to conspire to overturn an election and with ties to that horrific attack on the Capitol January 6th.
Their actions that day revealed a threat significant enough to warrant shutting down a major portion of the White House complex and putting everyone in the vicinity on high alert. The security breach that triggered the North Lawn lockdown represented a fundamental failure of perimeter security that should never have occurred at the most guarded residence in the world. Someone or something managed to penetrate barriers that were designed to be impenetrable, to bypass checkpoints that were supposed to be foolproof, to enter an area that was supposed to be accessible only to authorized personnel. The details of this breach remain shrouded in the secrecy that the Secret Service understandably maintains to protect their methods and prevent future attacks. However, the mere fact that such a breach occurred at all is deeply troubling. It suggests that determined individuals, whether motivated by political extremism, personal grievance, or something else entirely, can get closer to the president than anyone would consider acceptable.
That case is dying with a whimper today. A 6-page, narrow filing from the special counsel saying can't charge a president or try a president for a crime when he is the president. In the words of Jack Smith, it's an undue burden on a future President Trump to have this criminal prosecution. What's more, and what's particularly noteworthy in this filing, Nancy, is Jack Smith says we can't even hold this in abeyance until 2029 and the end of his second and final term, that's too much of a burden on a president too. This case must be dismissed, Jack Smith argues. No doubt Donald Trump's team will agree to this dismissal. It goes back to the D.C. federal judge who's navigated this case for 16 months, Tanya Chutkan, to decide whether to accept this dismissal. There's no indication in any of this case so far she would do anything but follow what the prosecutors recommend.
And Scott, what about the other case that Jack Smith has been spearheading in Florida, the classified documents case?
Yeah, the second federal criminal prosecution of Donald Trump, also by Jack Smith.
The North Lawn breach served as a wake-up call, a reminder that the security apparatus surrounding the White House, while extensive and sophisticated, is not infallible. Then came the gunfire incident that shook the White House to its foundations and demonstrated that threats to the president had escalated from theoretical concerns to deadly reality. Shots were fired near a Secret Service checkpoint on the White House perimeter, transforming the carefully manicured grounds of the presidential residence into a potential kill zone. The sound of gunfire echoing near the most powerful office in the world is not something that can be easily dismissed or forgotten. It represents a breach of the sacred trust that protects the president, a violation of the security bubble that has historically kept American leaders safe from physical harm. The fact that Donald Trump was inside the White House when the shots rang out
was dismissed by the judge in Fort Pierce, Florida, just days after the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. She had cited some Supreme Court language that the special counsel may not have been lawfully appointed, so she dismissed on those grounds. Jack Smith has been trying to appeal that and bring that case back up, resuscitate it. There's no indication based on today's filing he'll continue with those efforts either. But again, Jack Smith was being passively, indirectly urged this weekend, including by Senator-elect Adam Schiff, to consider just hitting the pause button on this until 2029. But he makes it quite clear in this filing, Nancy, there's no pause button. This case is to be dismissed. Of course, the Supreme Court reviewed this case at length this year over the issue of presidential immunity and granted Trump some version of presidential immunity. Jack Smith went back to a second grand jury, got a second indictment on the same felony charges to bring this case after the Supreme Court's determination. Now he's saying
adds another layer of horror to an already terrifying scenario. The President of the United States, the leader of the free world, was sheltering in a building that had just become the scene of an active shooting threat. The gunfire incident forced another full lockdown of the White House complex, with Secret Service agents responding with the speed and professionalism that their training demands. Emergency protocols were activated, security perimeters were reinforced, and the entire White House apparatus ground to a halt while the threat was assessed and neutralized. The press corps, accustomed to covering the daily dramas of presidential politics, found themselves in the unfamiliar position of being potential targets, sheltering in place while security forces worked to determine the nature and extent of the danger. The lockdown persisted until the Secret Service was confident that the threat had been contained and that the president was no longer in immediate danger. But the psychological impact of such incidents lingers long after the all clear is sounded, creating an atmosphere of constant vigilance and underlying fear that permeates every aspect of White House operations. These security incidents have occurred against a backdrop of unparalleled political chaos and institutional breakdown that has gripped the Trump administration and the nation as a whole. The president is waging war with Iran, a conflict that threatens to spiral into a wider conflagration with potentially catastrophic consequences. The rhetoric emanating from the White House has escalated to apocalyptic levels, with Trump threatening to destroy civilizations and promising consequences that could reshape the geopolitical landscape. Congress, once a reliable ally of the executive branch, is in open revolt against the president, with members of his own party calling for his removal and discussing constitutional mechanisms to achieve that goal. Trump's health has become a matter of intense speculation and concern, with reports suggesting that the stress of office and the mounting crises are taking a physical toll on the president. His approval ratings have plummeted to historic lows, with even traditional supporters expressing doubts about his fitness to continue serving. His administration has descended into chaos and dysfunction, with key officials leaving or being pushed out, and policy decisions being made in an atmosphere of constant crisis management. The confluence of these factors has created a perfect storm of vulnerability that the security incidents have only exacerbated. When a government is already reeling from multiple crises, when its leader is facing calls for removal from his own party, when the country is engaged in overseas military conflict, and when the economy is showing signs of strain, the addition of security threats to the White House creates a situation that strains the capacity of American institutions to their breaking point. The Secret Service, while highly capable, cannot operate in a vacuum. The agency depends on intelligence sharing, interagency cooperation, and the overall stability of the government to effectively protect the president. When those supporting structures are themselves under stress, when the government is lurching from crisis to crisis, the ability of the Secret Service to anticipate and prevent threats is potentially compromised. The security incidents at the White House are not isolated events, but symptoms of a broader institutional fragility that has developed during Trump's tenure. The psychological toll of repeated security lockdowns on the White House staff and the president himself cannot be overstated. Working in an environment where the threat of violence is a constant presence, where gunfire can erupt at any moment, where security breaches can materialize without warning, creates a level of stress that erodes morale and impairs judgment. The staff who keep the presidency functioning, from the senior advisors to the kitchen workers to the maintenance personnel, find themselves operating in a state of heightened alert that is exhausting and demoralizing. The president, who already faces the immense pressures of leading a nation in crisis, must also contend with the knowledge that his own physical safety is not guaranteed, that the fortress he inhabits is not as secure as it appears. This psychological burden can affect decision-making, contributing to the erratic and impulsive behavior that has characterized Trump's response to the various crises he faces. The international implications of the White House security incidents are equally profound, sending signals to allies and adversaries alike about the stability of the American government. When foreign leaders see reports of gunfire near the president's residence, when they hear about lockdowns and security breaches, they form judgments about American power and American reliability that can shape their own policy decisions. Adversaries may be emboldened to test American resolve, calculating that a government struggling with internal chaos and security threats may be less willing or able to respond to external challenges. Allies may begin to hedge their bets, exploring alternative partnerships and reducing their dependence on American security guarantees. The perception of American vulnerability, once established, can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, as the erosion of confidence in American institutions leads to behavior that further undermines American influence and power. The recurring security incidents also raise profound questions about the adequacy of the security measures that protect the White House and the president. The Secret Service has responded to each incident with professionalism and effectiveness, containing threats and ensuring that no harm came to the president or his immediate staff. However, the fact that threats are materializing with increasing frequency suggests that the current security posture may not be sufficient to address the evolving nature of the dangers facing the president. The Secret Service may need to implement additional security measures, restricting access to the White House even further, increasing surveillance and monitoring, and developing new protocols to prevent future breaches. However, there is a tension between the need for security and the need for the White House to function as the center of American government. Too much security can impede the ability of the government to operate, isolating the president from the advisors and information he needs to make effective decisions. The Secret Service must navigate this tension, balancing security requirements against operational necessities, while also contending with the broader instability that has characterized the Trump administration. The political dimension of the security incidents has not been lost on observers, who note that the lockdowns and security breaches have occurred at times when the political pressure on Trump has been most intense. The connection between political instability and security threats is not coincidental. When a society is deeply polarized, when political rhetoric is extreme, when institutions are under stress, the risk of violence against political leaders increases. The threats that have forced White House lockdowns are expressions of a broader anger and frustration that pervades American society, a manifestation of the tensions that have been building throughout Trump's presidency. The security incidents reflect the breakdown of political norms and the erosion of social cohesion that have accompanied Trump's tenure, and they serve as a warning that the consequences of this breakdown extend far beyond the political realm. The response of the Trump administration to the security incidents has been characteristically combative, with the president and his allies dismissing concerns about White House security as exaggerated or politically motivated. Trump has sought to project an image of strength and control, emphasizing that the Secret Service has the situation under control and that there is no cause for alarm. However, this confident posture conflicts with the reality of multiple lockdowns and security breaches, creating a credibility gap that further erodes public confidence in the administration's competence. The dismissive response to legitimate security concerns reflects a broader pattern of the administration's approach to crisis, characterized by denial, deflection, and an unwillingness to acknowledge the seriousness of the challenges facing the country. The role of the media in covering the security incidents has been a subject of debate, with some critics accusing the press of sensationalizing the threats and others praising journalists for bringing attention to the vulnerabilities. The constant media attention to the security incidents has kept the issue in the public eye, preventing the administration from simply moving on and pretending that nothing happened. However, the media coverage has also contributed to the atmosphere of crisis, amplifying the sense that the White House is under siege and that the country is in a state of emergency. The relationship between the media and the administration has been adversarial throughout Trump's presidency, and the coverage of the security incidents has been no exception, with each side accusing the other of distorting the truth for political purposes. The legal implications of the security incidents are still unfolding, with investigations underway to determine how the breaches occurred and who was responsible. The perpetrators, if apprehended, could face serious federal charges, including potentially attempting to assault or kill the president. However, the broader legal questions surrounding the incidents extend beyond individual prosecution, raising issues about the adequacy of security measures and the accountability of those responsible for protecting the president. Congressional committees have expressed interest in the incidents, with some members demanding hearings and investigations into the security vulnerabilities that were exposed. The legal and political fallout from the security incidents could continue for months or even years, as the various investigations work their way through the system and as the political implications of the incidents become clearer. The historical context of the White House security incidents is also worth considering, as presidential security has been a concern throughout American history, with assassinations and assassination attempts tragically marking the nation's past. The Secret Service was created in response to the assassination of President William McKinley in 1901, and the agency has evolved over the decades to meet the changing nature of threats to the president. The security incidents during Trump's presidency represent a new chapter in this history, reflecting the contemporary challenges of protecting a leader in an era of political polarization and technological change. The lessons learned from these incidents will inform future security protocols and perhaps prevent more serious incidents from occurring. However, the incidents also serve as a reminder that presidential security is never guaranteed, and that the threat of violence against American leaders is a persistent reality of democratic governance. The operational impact of the security incidents on the functioning of the executive branch has been significant, with lockdowns disrupting the normal flow of work and delaying important decisions. The White House is the nerve center of American government, and when it is locked down, the entire machinery of the executive branch slows or stops. Meetings are canceled, communications are interrupted, and the rhythm of governance is disrupted. In the context of the other crises facing the Trump administration, these disruptions are particularly problematic as they prevent the government from responding effectively to the challenges that confront it. The cumulative effect of repeated security incidents is to create a sense of instability and unpredictability that undermines the ability of the government to function, contributing to the broader perception that the Trump administration is unable to manage the multiple crises it faces. The broader social implications of the security incidents extend beyond the White House itself, affecting how Americans perceive their government and their country. When the most secure building in America is breached, when gunfire erupts near the president's residence, it sends a signal that something is deeply wrong, that the country is not as safe or as stable as it should be. This perception of insecurity erodes public confidence in institutions and contributes to the social anxiety that pervades American life. The sense that the government cannot protect itself raises questions about whether it can protect its citizens, further eroding the trust that is essential to the functioning of democratic governance. The security incidents thus contribute to a cycle of instability, as the perception of insecurity fuels political polarization and social unrest, which in turn create conditions for more security incidents. The economic implications of the White House security incidents should not be overlooked, as the perception of political instability can affect financial markets and business confidence. Investors do not like uncertainty, and the image of the White House under lockdown does not inspire confidence in the stability of American governance. The security incidents, combined with the other crises facing the Trump administration, create an environment of uncertainty that can affect investment decisions, consumer behavior, and economic growth. The economic consequences of the instability may be harder to quantify than the immediate security concerns, but they are nonetheless real and significant, representing another dimension of the challenges facing the country. The response of the international community to the White House security incidents has been one of concern and watchfulness, with foreign governments monitoring the situation closely and assessing its implications for their relations with the United States. Allied governments have expressed solidarity with the United States and offered support, but they are also quietly preparing for the possibility that American stability may continue to deteriorate. The security incidents have reinforced perceptions that the United States is going through a period of unprecedented political stress, and they have prompted foreign leaders to consider how to protect their own interests in an environment of American uncertainty. The long-term consequences of this perception for American foreign policy and international influence remain to be seen, but they are likely to be significant. The involvement of the Secret Service in the security incidents has been exemplary, with the agency demonstrating professionalism and effectiveness in managing the various threats. The Secret Service has responded to each incident with speed and efficiency, containing the threats and ensuring the president's safety. However, the agency has also been placed under strain by the frequency of the incidents, and questions have been raised about whether it has adequate resources and authority to meet the challenges it faces. The Secret Service has requested additional funding and personnel, and congressional action on these requests could be an indication of how seriously the security threats are being taken. The agency's ability to adapt to the evolving threat environment will be crucial to preventing future incidents and maintaining the security of the president and the White House. The political calculations surrounding the security incidents are complex, with various actors using the incidents to advance their own agendas. Trump's political opponents have cited the security incidents as evidence of the chaos and dysfunction of his administration, arguing that the breaches and lockdowns demonstrate that Trump is unable to manage the basic functions of government. Trump's supporters, by contrast, have dismissed the security concerns as exaggerated and have criticized the media for what they see as alarmist coverage. The security incidents have thus become another battleground in the broader political struggle that has characterized Trump's presidency, with each side seeking to use the incidents to support its own narrative about the state of the country and the competence of the administration. The security incidents have also had personal consequences for Trump and his family, who have had to confront the reality that their lives are at risk. The president's family members, including his children and grandchildren, have been affected by the security measures that have been implemented implemented in response to the threats. The constant security presence, the lockdowns, the sheltering in place, all of these have created a sense of being under siege that cannot be easy to bear. The psychological burden of living with the knowledge that violence is a real possibility, that the security bubble can be breached, is a weight that the Trump family has had to carry. The personal dimension of the security incidents is often overlooked in the political analysis, but it is a significant aspect of the situation that deserves consideration. The potential for escalation of the security threats is a serious concern, as the incidents that have already occurred suggest that the threats are becoming more frequent and more serious. The progression from a security breach of the North Lawn to gunfire near the White House perimeter represents a dangerous escalation that should be cause for alarm. If this pattern continues, the next incident could be even more serious, perhaps involving a direct attack on the White House itself. The Secret Service is working to prevent such an escalation, but the challenges it faces are formidable, given the broader instability of the political environment and the intensity of the anger directed at the president. The possibility that a serious security incident could occur during the ongoing crisis is a risk that cannot be ignored, and it is a risk that the American people should be aware of. The role of social media in the security incidents is worth noting, as the platforms have been used to spread information about the lockdowns and to amplify the atmosphere of crisis. The speed with which information about the incident spreads through social media can be both helpful and harmful, facilitating communication among security personnel while also potentially providing intelligence to those who would do harm. The Trump administration has clashed with social media companies throughout the president's tenure, and the security incidents have added another dimension to this ongoing struggle. The management of information about security incidents is a delicate balance, as the public has a right to know about threats to the president, while the need for operational security requires discretion and restraint. The longer-term implications of the security incidents for the presidency and for American governance are profound, suggesting that the era of presidential invincibility may be coming to an end. The White House, once seen as an impregnable fortress, has been shown to be vulnerable, and this vulnerability may have lasting consequences for how the presidency is perceived and how it is protected. Future presidents will likely face even more stringent security measures, restricting their ability to engage with the public and perhaps contributing to the isolation of the presidency. The security incidents also raise questions about whether the Secret Service can effectively protect the president in an era of political polarization and technological change, and whether the agency needs to adapt its methods to meet the evolving threat environment. The security incidents at the White House represent a stark warning about the state of American democracy and the challenges facing the country. The breaches, the gunfire, the lockdowns, all of these are symptoms of a deeper malaise, a society that is struggling with fundamental questions about its identity and its direction. The violence that has threatened the White House is a manifestation of the anger and frustration that pervades American life, an expression of the breakdown of civility and consensus that has characterized Trump's presidency. The security incidents are not the cause of this breakdown, but rather a symptom of it, and they serve as a reminder that the consequences of political polarization extend far beyond the ballot box. The security of the president is ultimately the responsibility of the American people, and the threats that have emerged against the White House reflect the state of the country they are called upon to govern. The response of the American people to the security incidents has been one of shock and concern, with many expressing dismay that the White House could be subject to such threats. The image of the president's residence under siege is a powerful one, conveying a sense of vulnerability that is difficult to reconcile with the traditional image of American strength and stability. The American people have been forced to confront the reality that the political violence that has emerged in recent years is not limited to isolated incidents, but can reach the very center of government. This confrontation with reality is painful but necessary, forcing the country to grapple with the challenges that threaten its democratic institutions and the security of its leaders. The media coverage of the security incidents has been extensive and often intense, with the press devoting significant resources to reporting on the breaches and their implications. The coverage has kept the issue in the public eye, ensuring that the security incidents are not forgotten or overlooked. However, the coverage has also been criticized for sensationalism, with some observers arguing that the press has exaggerated the significance of the incidents in order to generate interest and ratings. The tension between the need to inform the public and the impulse to dramatize events is a constant challenge for the media, and the coverage of the White House security incidents has been no exception. The media's role in shaping public perception of the incidents is significant, as the way the story is framed will influence how the public understands the situation and what conclusions they draw from it. The security incidents have also provided fodder for political satire and cultural commentary, with comedians and commentators using the events as material for their critiques of the Trump administration and the state of American politics. The image of the White House under lockdown has been a rich source of material for those who seek to expose the contradictions and failures of the administration, and the incidents have been referenced in countless jokes, sketches, and memes. This cultural dimension of the security incidents adds another layer to the political significance, as the way the events are remembered and understood will be shaped by how they are represented in popular culture. The security incidents at the White House serve as a stark reminder of the fragility of democratic institutions and the importance of protecting them. The breaches, the gunfire, the lockdowns, all of these are warnings that the norms and traditions that have sustained American democracy are under threat, and that the consequences of their erosion can be severe. The security of the president is not merely a matter of personal safety, but a symbol of the stability and continuity of American governance. And the threats that have emerged against the White House represent challenges to the very foundation of the American political system. The response to these challenges will shape the future of American democracy, determining whether the country can recover from the instability of the Trump era or whether it will continue to spiral into further crisis and conflict.